Next item on the agenda is public comment period open time. Board action or discussion cannot be taken on non-agenda matters. The board may briefly respond to statements or questions and, if deemed necessary, refer the subject matter to the appropriate department. Yes, thank you. Refer the matter to the appropriate department for follow-up and or to schedule the matter on a subsequent board agenda. When addressing the board, please approach the rostrum and after being recognized by the chairman, give your name and comments. Each speaker is allocated 3 minutes to speak. Comments should be limited to matters within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. We have several requests this morning. Our first speaker is Mr. Wyatt Paxton, followed by Mr. Russ Wade. Mr. Paxton, good morning.
Hello, how you doing?
On top of the world. You, sir.
Good, me too, me too. The resolution, and one comment I had about your resolutions, I've been at many different board meetings, and you provided no further comment from the public after you gave your comment. How could they provide further input to you or something you might have overlooked? You might think about asking for further public comment. What the resolution talked about in Minter's case about separating it, there were many other solutions that could have been helped or suggested. Community board to help Mr. Lease to look at some specific items, that type of thing. But I think that would be beneficial if you allowed the comment. You could limit that comment as you do already, but further input would have been, I think, great in that case. Here today also to talk about the Ensemble project. As the paper said, there was over $500,000 of incurred cost. The paper did not indicate that the county provides only the first $250,000, and the rest of that is covered by an association, county association, which still comes from the taxpayers. The premiums for that are paid from the taxpayers. In that public request where we arrived at that $225,000, it only addressed outside billing costs. The request, I reiterate, was exactly how much taxpayers' money has been spent to date on open lawsuits. That would be staff time, expenses, board time, buildings, in-county service. All that time is going to be billed back to those departments. So I believe I forwarded to Mr. Kehoe a response to that. I think that amount could easily be half again, maybe more.
And Mr. Paxton, we appreciate your clarification.
Okay.
And I sent you an email this morning on that.
Oh, I hadn't received it as of 8:30 or 8 o'clock. Maybe it's hung up in the county system. I know how that to go through.
Or someone else's system.
Yeah, that's true. One of the many jobs of the supervisors, I think, is to minimize the financial impact on the county. And these lawsuits are one of those. The attorney has, via the newspaper, offered how to negotiate and resolve these issues. It's been said that it's been done many times, and Mr. Ensemble won't settle. That is not true. So we, as the Integrity Project, would request that the board look at those options and how we could bring that to light, how to settle that. As of this date, I've been still working on several open permits that are there. I am not getting any response about corrections. The Williamson Act is not part of those corrections anymore about the rezone. I cannot get any updated information. My requests are over a month old. No action. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paxton. Next speaker is Mr. Russ Wade, followed by Ms. Dolores Lucero. Good morning, Mr. Wade.
Good morning, and I thank you for your patience in listening to all of us snivellers. But we have all got messages. And my message to us today is about two issues that you've just been listening about, water and crime. And what do I think is a crime? I think hydraulic fracturing of shale is a crime. Here is why. 30 million gallons of fresh water toxified each time you inject to, when you're hydraulic fracking, you're trying to get oil and gas to the surface. But these 30 million gallons are toxified to the extent they poison people. Is this a safe technology? No. 30% of these wells fail, and people are affected severely. Their property values go to zero. Nobody wants to buy a toxic water supply, no matter what kind of house you have. I brought information on this subject. We have to realize the oil and gas industry has bought our state government with their $4 million investment in lobbying and their $400,000 a day lobbyist bill in Washington. The individuals that have been affected by this were uninformed. There are currently about 750 hydraulically fracked wells in California. There was a proposal, August 2011, for 178 new leases. In what counties? Colusa, Sutter, Tehama. They are headed here. My point to you is we should consider a ban on this technology because of its toxicity. It is horrible. I just want to read you one victim. And if an individual had done this to a person, they'd be in prison. First of all, the value of their beautiful home went to zero. They had to move out because of health reasons. In February 2011, Carl developed intestinal cancer and had his intestines removed. My daughter, 5 months pregnant, suffering from seizures, had lead poisoning. We had been out of the house 5 months, and she was 1 point below toxic. But I would like to say that after moving out, our health improved, but it did not. Although the chemical and mineral contents have gone down in my blood, my body is still paying for high doses. High doses of what? In their water, they had trace amounts of radium, uranium. Over 630 toxic chemicals are used in this process. It should not be done. I've got copies for everyone here. I would really appreciate it if you look at it and consider this ban. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wade. Ms. Dolores Lucero, followed by Mr. Richard Fighton.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Ms. Lucero.
Is it ready? How do you turn this on? Oops. Is there a way to turn this on? Okay. Can you adjust it, bring it up more? Thank you. Okay. I have a couple concerns. You said this is a month of crime where there's a lot of abuse going on. Well, the county has a lot of abuse by public officials who don't do what's right for the citizens. When citizens have to come up and beg, year after year, not month after month or week after week, for years, these citizens have been asking you to do the right thing. You have not. You have basically been beyond. You're doing more than you should be doing. You're breaking laws, which it falls under the color law abuse. That means you're using your authority beyond the boundaries. It's a crime for you to basically to override any decisions that affect the citizens. It's section code 242 title 18. It's a crime. When you start using your authority to make decisions that you're not listening to the people, you're breaking laws. And you're not willing to listen to anybody. We have so much crime going on in this county that is affected a lot of people. It also applies to judges, police officers, security guards, and you. These laws have been, excuse me. My concern is that you have not listened. And what you're doing is a crime. We need to take action. The people need to take action. If you go under the Attorney General or the FBI website, you see this color of law abuse. It gives you details on how to take action against the public officials because they're acting beyond their authority. And we need to stop you. We, the people, need to stop you. Mr. Lee, you basically bragged about how the staff has done a wonderful job, the public works, and regarding how much things have been built in this county. But you forgot. You're not supposed to defend the public work. You're supposed to defend the people and represent the people. The money they spend and the time they spend out there building these bridges and all these beautiful things, that money comes from the taxpayer. So for you to sit there and basically give these people the credit for them doing the job and building these wonderful bridges, it's a waste because you're not doing your job. So you need to start representing the people. I think it's sad that you're beyond that.
Thank you, Ms. Lucero. Mr. Richard Fighton, followed by Anna Marie Helvexi. Okay, next speaker then is Anna Marie. Is it Lavasic?
I'll make it easy. It's
Thank you.
Anna Marie Lavasic, and I'm a
Lavasic.
resident of the Elk Trail East
Thank you.
area. I'm
Very
here in
good.
regards to
Welcome.
Thank you. In regards to the request for a study on the feasibility of separating the water agency from the public works. Supervisors, it is undeniable that the CSA 6 board, the residents of the Elk Trail East and West areas, Sacramento, and as far as Washington, D.C., have worked to accomplish their goals to get water to our areas. This took more than one person. It took many people. It took more hours and effort than one can imagine. As you stated, Pat Minturn is very busy, perhaps too busy. You've actually solidified even more our concern that the efficiency of a single employee is not adequate to take care of the present concerns and those of the future regarding water management. You've actually made our case that one man is not sufficient to handle the workload in an efficient manner today or in the future. Water resource is a necessity, and it shouldn't take tears and sweat to get it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Mr. Joseph Labasic. Good morning.
Good morning. How are all of you?
Doing well. Thank you.
Good, thank you. First, I would like to thank Pam for attending our CSA meeting. And I should introduce myself, Joe Lavasic. I'm a previous CSA 6 board member for 1 year during the course of construction because I had past experience in water treatment, water distribution in Southern California for several years. But I would like to address Les Baugh's comments. Like my wife stated, Mr. Minturn has got a pretty full plate. And I have no personal vendetta against Pat Minturn, Al Cathy. They have their hands full doing their jobs throughout the county in many different areas. I would like the board members to reconsider, just give a chance to Elk Trail Water Association to go out and find the funding so that to see if this is feasible or not. It would cost the county nothing if it's funded, okay? And if it isn't funded, then just let it go. We'll drop it. But give us a chance to see if it's feasible or not. If it is, then they could possibly, it could benefit all the residents of all the county members using public water. could possibly reduce the rates, and we could acquire more rights for more water in the future. We all know that Southern California is after the Northern California water. That's another concern that we all have. We need to secure our rights for our own use first. Save the water for the people that live here. And if we have excess, it's all the same people. We're all Californians. Let's share the water, but let's be smart about it. And then that's all I have to say about that. But the gentleman that was here regarding the fracking issue, I grew up in Pennsylvania. All my family's still back there in Pittsburgh area, and they're doing drilling back there all over the state. And my mom has noticed, and my sisters that live in the area, that the taste in the water is different. And they use toxic chemicals to extract that gas out of the rock. I don't know what it is, but it's not good for you. And everybody notices it. They're making a lot of money, the people that have farms and land that can be done on. They went door to door in a small community asking people to sign, you'll get $300, or $500 if you let us take that gas from underneath your property. And it's only like a 60 by 100 foot lot, but wherever they drill, it's pulling from all over. So I guess they have to have that right. But it's a health concern that really should be looked at. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir.
Do you have any questions for me?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Steve Boyd.
Good morning again, Steve Boyd, Elk Trail resident. And, I'm just using this public comment period as a little bit of a rebuttal for what I heard this morning. As our population continues to grow, water's going to be more and more important on so many different fronts. And all we've asked here is for an opportunity to provide a free study with a qualified organization to help us look forward to Shasta County water issues in the future. Now, Mr. Baugh, you made my point perfectly when you identified the multitude upon multitude of things that Public Works is responsible for. And I find it surprising that you're comparing our water resources and our water issues with roads and bridges and airports and landfills. That's not looking forward to the future, in my opinion. And I really don't understand why you wouldn't support a free study at no cost. We've heard that doing this might cost $400,000 to form the Shasta County Water Agency back to an independent department. How do you come up with those numbers when you haven't even looked at it? And we've tried to look at it. I have one question for you folks, and I hope somebody can get to the answer for me. I want to know how many dollars Public Works is pulling out of water-related income in the Shasta County Water Agency and the CSAs within that jurisdiction. You talk about money like it's extra, and I have reason to believe that funding was not the issue when the water agency was moved under Public Works. That's debatable. You guys have your opinion. We're hearing another side from people who used to work in that department. Those are the kinds of things that we would try to clear up in the study. So I just challenge you to tell me how much money from water-related income is being drawn into Public Works for all kinds of activities that may or may not be related. And if you get to the real bottom of it, you'll find that Public Works, in addition to charging over $1,000 a day to CSA 6, within that, we've caught them charging $1.80 a mile for vehicles. Is that reasonable? So please try to answer the question, and I'd love to see a figure as to what kind of income is actually coming in from water-related activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board under open comment period? All right, thank you. We'll now go to the consent calendar. The following consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They may be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested person may request that an item be removed from the consent calendar for discussion and consideration. I have no requests thus far to remove a consent calendar item. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to do so?
Move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion of the motion to approve the consent calendar? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. The regular calendar continued then. General Government. Administrative Office Board of Supervisors receive a legislative update and consider action on specific legislation related to Shasta County's legislative platform. Consider approving and authorizing the chairman to sign a letter which supports AB number 350, timber harvesting plans, exempt activities, and 3, receive supervisors' reports on county-wide issues. Mr. Lees.
Thank you, Chairman Keough, members of the board. A part of your package today is a proposed letter supporting Assembly Bill 350, and this relates to timber harvesting plans. More importantly, it relates to forest fire and being able to recoup some of the loss and continue to clear the forest. And so we're looking for the board to, if they concur, to have a motion supporting this letter and sending it forward to support AB 350.
Thank you, Mr. Lees.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to send such a letter. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion sending the letter on AB 350, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Anything else, Mr. Lees?
That's all I have.
Okay. Let's go to supervisors' reports. I'll start with Supervisor Baugh, if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you, Chairman Kehoe. Last week, I attended a Cottonwood Community CSA 17 meeting regarding the potential to assign sewer bills to the tax roll. I will tell you that I would say 30, 35 people attended the meeting out of, I think there's 1,000 or so people that participate in the CSA. I don't know if that number is close, but it's pretty close. Most of the people in the room were not interested in our board proposal to assign them to the tax bills. I'm sure that we'll be talking more about this, but I'm sure we'll also receive more letters and communication at the board level. I just want to make sure you knew that Public Works had conducted that. Actually, the Water Agency conducted that meeting, and I think they did a great job of making the presentation and answering questions. I also participated in the Walk a Mile. I just mentioned that because I do believe this board every year supports by resolution the subject of domestic violence and abuse. And it's a great time to bring attention to the need and to gain needed resources financially. The guys getting out there, it's not about the high heels, it's about the money that they raise to be able to support the Shasta Women's Refuge. And I appreciate every man who stepped out literally. I also attended the Boondockers Ball, and I mention this because it's in support of the Northern California Veterans Museum, and their project is ongoing. All the volunteer labor. This type of event, Sheriff Tom Baseco and I were the co-auctioneers for the evening. And you know what? People just reach deep into their pocket and their wallets and their purses, and they purchased items that will eventually help the museum through the resources that were gained that evening. So thank you to all those who bought tickets and attended the event. I wanted to make sure that well, actually, one more thing. Supervisor Keough and I attended the retirement certificate presentation of Lynn Miller in the assessor's office. I want to thank her. She chose not to come here for the certificate, but we'll publicly thank her anyway for her many years of service. Also attended with other supervisors the Volunteer Firefighter Awards Recognition Dinner. If it were not for our volunteers in our county fire department, CAL FIRE, we could not manage. The volunteers, I heard at the meeting, offering countless, tens of thousands of hours of public service to Shasta County. Once again, thank every volunteer firefighter who is out there on a continually, sometimes day-by-day basis. They were very receptive to the recent increase in the stipend from the Board of Supervisors. Heard that thank you many times. I wanted to make other supervisors aware that I'm heading off to the RCRC Rural Counties meeting. If there are any additional issues that any of you have, you would like to have me take on RCRC's open agenda, comments from the public, I'd be happy to do so. And that concludes my report. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Baugh. I have 3 items. The first is I attended with Mr. Lees the annual Public Works Safety Meeting, and one of the high points of that meeting was that Mr. L. Caffey was recognized as the Public Works Employee of the Year. And Mr. Minturn, thank you for recognizing all of the fine people that work in Public Works. We appreciate it. The next thing is, like Supervisor Baugh and Supervisor Giacomini, I attended the County Fire Volunteer Recognition, and Mr. Robert Pierce was recognized as the Volunteer of the Year. So, Chief, we thank you for that. It's well attended, well organized, and we appreciate that. And then finally, attended the Healthy Shasta meeting with Mr. Lees, and this was a dynamic, productive meeting where they stressed the value of exercise, the value of proper eating habits. And I will tell you this, Mr. Lees was so impressed that he insisted that we walk back to the office from where the meeting was conducted.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. But it was very good. Excellent presentations. Supervisor Modi.
I have to ask, was the meeting downstairs? Just checking.
I just have one item. I attended the Shasta Regional Transportation Agency subcommittee meeting on employee issues, and we met with the employees and talked for several hours.
Supervisor Giacomini.
Thank you, Chairman Kehoe. I attended the State Association of Counties new supervisors training. That was very informative and always learn a lot at that activity. Also, unlike Supervisors Baugh and Kehoe, attended the Volunteer Fire Appreciation Dinner, and it was excellent, Rick. Congratulations. And, you know, when you look at those volunteers that have, you know, served 30 years of service to their local communities, it's pretty incredible. Also attended the Shasta County Farm Bureau Spring Social, where they honored Lynn Lindstrand with their Distinguished Service Award, and then Betty Taylor with the Elizabeth Albal Woman in Agriculture Award. So.
Wonderful. Thank you, Supervisor Giacomini. Next item is item R6. Take the following actions. Receive a request from Pacheco Union School District Principal Jason Provence to transfer a parcel adjacent to the school to the school district, and consider providing direction to staff as appropriate. Mr. Lees.
Thank you, Chairman Kehoe, members of the board. Let me just provide a little background on this. It was sometime around 2007, I believe, where the Pacheco School District approached the county on a piece of property there. Staff looked at it and determined that at that particular time probably wouldn't have need for it. After reviewing the potential growth of and widening of Knighton Road based on things that were occurring, we kind of recanted that and said, you know, we need to relook at this and save this property in case we do something with Knighton Road. Fast forward to the summer of 2012, Superintendent Principal Provence, is that right? Provence, Superintendent Principal Provence sent me a letter asking if we would revisit the potential to have the county put up that land or give them that land. And I did respond to them in form of a letter. I probably CC'd board members, but I did respond indicating that due to the Veterans Home opening, due to the completion of Stillwater being the main thoroughfare, Knighton Road being the main thoroughfare, and a potential new development that's going across from the Veterans Home, that we determined that it was my recommendation at that particular time that we do not go forward in eliminating that property that borders Knighton Road, because I do foresee the day when it's going to have to be widened. It's only 2 lanes now, and I foresee the day it's going to have to be widened. With that, they have now come back and have very respectively requested that this item be put on the agenda to have them have an opportunity to make a presentation in front of the Board of Supervisors, and that brings us to today.
Thank you, Mr. Lees. Any questions at this time of Mr. Lees? All right, Mr. Solberg and Mr. Province, if you would like to come forward and make a presentation, it would be most welcome.
Good morning. I'm Jason Province, Superintendent Principal from Pacheco School District, and this is Board President Larry Solberg. Thank you for allowing us to be here. I did write a letter to Mr. Larry Lees on July 20th, 2012. As I went back and looked at the triangular property adjacent to Pacheco School property, with board support, I thought it would be a good idea for safety purposes that we get this property. When I went back and looked at the staff report that I sent, that was given to you guys back on 3/20/2007, it was recommended highly, disposable of property to Pacheco School. It is of no use to the county. It was said in the report, and it was stated that it should be given to the Pacheco School District. I just want you to know that I understand that maybe the recanting was for the widening of the road. We were told that the recanting was because of the Auto Mall property. So I'm unaware of where the recanting for the widening came from. I did not get that in written form anyway. So also, the lanes are 3 wide. There is a turn lane there. Through all this, we want to work with you, okay? For the safety of our students and our family, we would be willing to work with you at the county. We already maintain the property. We have a difficult time keeping parents from other districts, parking, people off the property. We mow it, we spray it, not the whole thing every time, but often we have to maintain it because we have people that come in and they park there. They use the property, especially when we have graduation, extracurricular events, sporting events, the property gets used. So it is a very valuable piece of property to the Pacheco Union School District. Again, we would be more than willing to work with you. I think there's opportunity there for widening. I don't disagree with that. We would use the other parts of the property if we had to. But I think if you look back, it's been a long time coming. I think the Knighton Road project was completed back in around 2001, and to this point there has been no widening, nothing done. Not that there might not be need in the future, I understand that. We would just ask that we could work with you and maybe get some resolve to this issue. If we were to have it for a parking structure, I think the board would support me and be more than willing to work with you guys if you had to park equipment there or do something to that nature. Thank you.
Thank you. Other speakers?
Larry Solberg, President of the Board. I just wish to reiterate the need for the safety. It's a triangular piece of property that even if you widen the road, you wouldn't need all of that property. And to widen it from 3 to 4 lanes would not take very much of that area. We have agreed to positions like building a fence away from the area needed for the road and outside of what would then be the county's property. And that would also increase the safety for our students because people park on Knighton Road and drop off their kids, which a new fence might stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Solberg. Anything else?
Thank you. Chris Carmona, I'm on the school board. I just wanted to address the recanting issue briefly. It wasn't recanted because of a future widening. Mr. Keogh made the motion to table it until after the Auto Mall vote. It lay dormant for a while. We were getting ready to bring it back, and then the Hawkins development came forward, so we decided to wait. And so the reason it was recanted was not because of a re-widening or a safety issue. It was just because of these two issues of the developments, the Auto Mall and the Hawkins development, were in front of the board. And then just on the widening issue, it's a 2-mile stretch of road between Interstate 5 and Airport Road. This piece is less than 1/10 of a mile along Knighton Road. There's two bridges, one over Churn Creek and one over Clover Creek. If this road is going to be re-widened, which it was just done in 2001, you're going to looking at a very significant improvement of redesigning two bridges and the entire length of Knighton Road. This piece is just a very, very, very small segment of that area. So I hope you reconsider and bring it back.
Thank you, Mr. Carmona.
Sorry, one more thing. We do have a board right down here for a facilities improvement plan, and it does show some of the parking using a portion of that property. If you would like to look at it, you're more than welcome. It doesn't use the whole triangular piece, but back then when Nichols, Melberg, and Rosetto did this, they put the parking structure in there. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Lees, let's summarize observations that you may have, and then we'll return it to the board.
Just to clarify, my letter that went out to the superintendent back in 2012, and I'm just going to read the last paragraph to remove any ambiguity as far as my recommendation and why I came to you with that recommendation. And so to quote that letter, it is particularly difficult in the case of Knighton Road, which may need to be widened in the foreseeable future. Knighton Road was initially constructed as a two-lane arterial with a left turn median. Today, it provides primary access to the Veterans Home, Reading Airport, Stillwater Industrial Park, and several large subdivisions within Reading city limits. And now, since then, there's another project that's also in the drawing stages. It's important that Shasta County retains the existing right-of-way today in order to avoid problems and preserve options for future generations. And I would add, now that's the end of the letter, I would add, though, it is also within Shasta County's general plan that that be a four-lane road. And so that's where my recommendation came from.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Lees. Board member comments. Supervisor Giacomini.
Thank you, Chairman Kehoe. So a question is the property large enough to, as they suggest, to be used for split purposes like that? Parking for them and then still have enough left for road widening in the future?
I believe the potential is probably there. I would look for an engineer to design that. The problem that scares me, having been on a Board of Education for 20 years, is that you're moving kids closer to a four-lane highway.
And would the fence help allay that worry?
If it's a freeway, still guard barrel.
Yeah.
That would prevent a car from busting through.
Okay.
Supervisor Baugh.
Thank you, Chair Kehoe, and thanks for the presentation this morning. I have two challenges with the county giving up the property at this point. And by the way, I'm not totally opposed to a portion of the property being used for the school use, but I have two issues, and I think you've covered them both, but I'm going to state them from my county responsibility perspective. One of the worst safety issues we have in Shasta County is along Gas Point Road as it leads from the freeway all the way down to the school. We have a very old road that has zero ability to grow. A couple of years ago, we have actually some money available in the county to buy right-of-way, and we thought during a depressed economy, this is a great time to present the community with, we have a few dollars, we'd like to buy a couple feet of your road so we could consider safety of the students. We had a public meeting, and this was the number one issue, was advertised. The Record Searchlight covered it, Valley Post covered it, and I don't believe to date we've had a single person willing to give up any of their right-of-way so that we could make the road safer for the students. We'd just like to even have 2 or 3 feet so we didn't have students walking along the road, and there's just no room. The houses come right up to it. So here we have a school, and we have a fairly decent road that we know will need to be widened in the future. While it's a decent road today, when the Reading Airport, the industrial park, eventually has a tenant, obviously we don't have one today, but eventually that will change. And you've got a large corridor of commercial property extending all the way from the new bridge that we installed for traffic purposes all the way back to Highway 44 that will also continue to fill with commercial structures. What we need, I don't think we know right now how much of the property we need. So that's the first challenge. We know we need to retain part of that property, I believe. Now, I'm not an engineer, you know I'm not, but I have taken a look at it, and I do believe we need to retain part of it. The second one is the safety issue. The safety issue, I believe, partly could be resolved right now by the school by simply locking that gate that you have from the road. I love that road. I've spent the last several years driving on that road at least 2 or 3 times a week. And if you go by, challenge anybody to go by there on a school drop-off time, you will see people parking on busy Knighton Road, literally screeching to a halt with their young kids in there, parking partially out in the traffic lane, opening car doors into traffic on the other side, letting their kids out through the gate to the school instead of being safety conscious and going around into the school property like they should. Now, the worst that I've seen it many times, are people parking on the opposite side of Knighton Road and saying, "Hurry, kids, dodge the cars." I even saw one car pull back out when the kid was heading back to the car to get, I don't know, a sack lunch, backpack, or something they had left in the car, with the parent scooting away and the kid almost being hit by their own parent. To me, it is one of the most dangerous road-school combinations that exists. In my mind, the school could do a lot by simply locking that gate. At various times, the gate should not exist to begin with. At various times, the fence has been torn down for the convenience of people dropping off children. We have built it and put it back up again for the safety of those kids. If there is anything that I don't want to see as a Shasta County supervisor, it would be giving away a property that invited more danger to kids and a dead child because we were hasty in making a decision. I believe that we should give more consideration to existing safety. I would be willing, if I saw existing safety adhered to sit down and have that conversation as to whether I could support a portion of the property. But I've witnessed it year after year after year. It's being used and I think encouraged for kids to be dropped off there right on a busy road. So I'm going to stick with Mr. Lees's recommendation.
Thank
this
you,
time.
Supervisor
Thank you.
BOS. Supervisor Modi.
Thank you, Chair Keough. I agree with several of the comments of my colleagues in that I think that there's a potential down the road for part of that property perhaps to be used by the school for your needs. But the concern I have is, has been stated, is there is going to be a much higher volume of use on that roadway in the next few years, maybe next 5-10 years, which means we're going to probably do some additional widening with that road. So I think it's a little premature for us to try to determine what use will be made of that property at this point and how much we should keep and how much we should let go. In reference to, it's only one little small part of right-of-way on the road, 1/10 of a mile, whatever it might be. Quite frankly, that's how we tend to purchase most of our right-of-way, one segment at a time, and it's a very lengthy process, and it doesn't make any sense for us to give away property that we have to turn around and try to get back at some later date. So, and then there was mention that, maybe some people are using, hopefully they go around the way they're supposed to into the school, and maybe they use some of that area for parking. And and that's fine with me. I mean, that's kind of like what I look is with the city of Reading and the farmers market down there. They allow them to use their property right now until they need it. And then at some point they're going to make the move, and if we need that property, we're going to probably ask you not to park in there anymore. The other concern I have a little bit is last year when we had the discussion about the Hawkins development, it was the school, I believe, that came forward and claimed that we could not use that portion of the roadway that was between the truck stop and the school because it was being used for a drop-off point, and we shouldn't allow trucks to come out of the truck stop onto that little portion of the road and come back out. Now, that's a public right-of-way road. And so with that whole issue, and with the school saying you can't use this public roadway for the trucks because we want to use it for everything, I have a little problem with that. And so I'm not willing to give up property on the other side of that corner until I know exactly what the layout's going to be and where we're going to end up. I do hope, and I do think there is the possibility, certainly down the road when we know how this is going to shape up, that there could be a portion of that property that could be used by the school with the precautions that we have been talked about, that there's some adequate safety precautions put in place to prevent parents, really, it's not the kids, it's the parents from dropping off their kids on a very busy roadway, and I know it's, it's a problem that I'm sure you as the superintendent face every day trying to get them not to do that, so.
Thank you, Supervisor Modi. A question of you, Mr. Lees and Mr. Cruz. Is there value in the board formally taking a position on this matter relative to a motion?
I believe it would probably be prudent to have some board action to provide clarity
Thank you.
on a basis moving forward.
You concur, Mr. Lees? All right. Mr. Baugh, would you care to? Oh, what do we have here? Ms. Lucera. Thank you.
Stuck in.
I was wondering, why is this so hard to trying to help the citizens or anybody who come and ask for something? I mean, is there any way that you guys could get more educated on how to help the people? Because you don't seem to understand. They're asking for something that it will benefit the children. You have your say, but they also are asking for you to consider some decisions here. And my concern is that you're making a decision so quick without even looking into exactly what they would like. I mean, open it up to the public, or do a public hearing, look into exactly what it would benefit the school. I mean, Mr. Modi, you talk about maybe the property you could use it for down the road. Well, down the road, you might not be here. You might not be reelected. All the decisions you've been making, how you've been affecting some of the citizens. So same thing with you, Mr. Lee. You might not be elected again, and I really don't think you will be, because you're not helping the citizens. You're not willing to kind of represent them the way you should, because you were elected to represent the people and serve the people. So give them an opportunity to sit down and explain their presentation for the people to see what they're asking. Think about you talk about the children, but yet you're not willing to listen. You're not willing to make this county to grow. You talk about bringing business, but how can you bring business? You can't even fix your own problems. You have your own county. You got issues in your own county here. You need to fix those before you move on to the next problems, because that's what they're called, problems, because you create problems because you're not willing to negotiate. You, as Mr. Modi, you as were an officer of the law, you should know that there is ways to work with the people, but you're not willing. You need to do something. You need to listen to these citizens and hopefully make a better decision. If you make a decision now, that tells you that you're not listening. They're asking for you to consider for those children. It's not for them. So there's a way you can do it. Even though there's a project down the road, there's other properties. You don't need to hang on to that. It's just sitting there. That's very selfish if you don't try to do something for the children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lucero. Supervisor Baugh?
Thank you. I'm going to move that we deny the request.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion of the motion? All those?
Yeah, I have one item.
Yes, sir.
Following on Ms. Lucero's comments about being more educated, I would suggest, Ms. Lucero, that you should do that as well. I think that speaks volumes.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, gentlemen. Previously, we had a closed session announcement, but we are not having a closed session, so we are now adjourned. Thank you.
R7.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Yes, thank you. R7. Well, we're back in the saddle. R7.
Good morning, supervisors. nice to see you today on this nice sunny day. This morning I'm here to present on February 26th, the Board of Supervisors adopted an ordinance placing the responsibility to manage the county's fleet of vehicles under the Department of Public Works. The actions before you now will finish that transaction, so on July 1st when this takes place, everything will be done smoothly at that time. This updates all of the policies and procedures related to fleet management to show those changes, update them to current activities, so that way everything is smooth and ready to go on July 1st with the transition. So at this time, I'll take any questions.
Well, I do have questions now that I see it's on the agenda. First paragraph on page 2 reads as follows. In addition to the changes related to transfer, it is recommended that the county fleet management no longer operate a rental fleet of county vehicles for use by county departments and allow for the use by departments in an existing county contract with a nationwide car rental agency for all county vehicle rentals. And you have performed a cost analysis of that, indicating that this will be a cost savings to the county?
Yes, over the last 2 years, we have been losing money on the county fleet rental because the departments weren't using it as much, but we were continuing to have to make the payments to the vehicles. So we did a careful analysis and determined that it was no longer feasible to operate our own rental fleet. The cars were getting older. We were going to have to replace some of those vehicles, and it was going to cost us more than we were making. It wasn't paying for itself anymore.
Well, then talk to us about the cost savings. Quantify it.
We lost, over the last 2 years, we've lost approximately $10,000 in our rental fleet, about $5,000 a year. And then if we were to replace vehicles, they could cost anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000 depending on the vehicle, if we could get them used or not, the mileage, that type of thing. And the departments were just not renting the vehicles enough to pay for those costs.
Okay. Let's look at paragraph 2 on page 2. It is also recommended that the county will no longer act as the primary fueling station for county vehicles, allowing fuel to be purchased at local and nationwide fueling stations with which the county has agreements. So let's talk about the logic of that recommendation and also the cost benefit of that recommendation.
We've actually, over the last year and a half, been utilizing other fuel stations versus the county fuel station. This would just kind of finalize that transition. We determined the savings to be approximately $30,000 a year. I think the departments immediately started recognizing savings. We've gotten compliments from the departments very early on that they were finding that this was saving money. They had more options. They could go to more gas stations using the Reading oil for the primary locations in the county versus driving all the way into one. They've been able to use them countywide. So we have seen that. As far as the actual dollar amount, I don't have that right immediately available, but I do know that we've recognized savings. We've been able to lower our administrative fee by about 1.5% over the last 2 years in order to, due to those savings for the fuel.
So both of those recommendations, A and B on page 2, represent privatizing an important segment of our operation. Is that correct?
That is the way that, yes.
And what is the reciprocal as far as workforce reduction? Are we eliminating any positions?
No.
Well, what will the people be doing that previously did these activities?
We actually, over the couple of years, we've had people retire, and we did not replace those positions. And so knowing that these types of things were going to be taking place, so while we're having no layoffs, no loss of duties, we just didn't replace certain positions as they became open.
Okay. I see Mr. Lee is
Well,
requested.
you can go to your final one.
All right, my final question is, the fourth paragraph on page 2, where we talk about providing a 5% stipend for the oversight responsibilities. Now, what's the logic involved in that?
I'll defer that to Mr. Lees.
I will defer that to Ms. Schaefer. No, I'm kidding, I'm kidding. It is within county policy and practice when a manager is taking on additional responsibilities and overseeing different operations, that is included in our cost studies prior to making that decision to do that. So this is within county practice and our process. When there are multiple functions that a manager is going to be responsible for, that the salary is footnoted to compensate them for the additional responsibility that they're picking up. What that enables us to do, of course, is to not have to hire a new manager, a new person, and it creates the opportunity to be a lot more efficient. Now, with that being said, I wanted to go back to one point, if I might, on the job responsibilities changing a little bit. And whereas through attrition we have been able to facilitate this movement without having to lay off or create any layoffs at all. We have provided opportunities for people to work in different places, and that's because openings have been available. If you remember, and this we started talking about this actually when Ms. Schaefer came on as her role as Support Services Director, we started talking about fleet, how we had a duplication of services between our fleet gas station and Public Works fleet, and also the fuel. And basically, the discussion that I had with Ms. Schaefer, and I directed her to look at this very early on, was the fuel, is the county is not in the fuel business. That should not be a core service that we are providing. And so when we started looking at that, and it was determined that not only, in my opinion, is that a core business we ought to be providing, we're losing money on it. And so that was what drove me to say we need to see if there is a better way to do this. We were actually providing fuel to outside nonprofits, and again, overall, it was costing us money, and it didn't make good economic sense. And whereas water is something the county should be responsible for and be have direction to, fuel is not should not be a primary function of Shasta County. And so that's what stimulated some of this.
Mr. Lees, do I interpret your remarks to mean that in the past we have subsidized outside nonprofits via fuel distribution?
I don't know. I think subsidized is pretty strong. It would be hard to determine whether it was that nonprofit that we subsidized or ourselves, but clearly it was to the point to where it was costing us more and more money. And we're getting to the point where we're going to have to look at tanks and licensing and new EPA laws and things like that. And I just kept asking the question, why the heck are we in the fuel business? We ought to be helping people.
Okay. Mr. Modi?
Yeah, I'll just, for what it's worth, add the comment about the fuel system. When City of Reading did the same thing, the police department used to have its own fuel tanks, and there's a number of issues that came along with that. There's the maintenance of the pumps, there's the probabilities of spills, there's the tank maintenance, the tank upgrades got very costly. I assume we're going to use the card lock system.
That's what
which requires the operator has a card, so you know who's doing the fueling. It requires you to enter the vehicle number, the mileage, so it makes everything much more efficient as far as tracking not only the use of gas, but which vehicles are using the most gas, which then made them realize, okay, maybe that vehicle needs a tune-up. So it helped the fleet maintenance to improve their performance, cut down a lot of the costs. And I assume we get some kind of contract break on our price of gasoline.
Yes.
Because we were going to buy it in bulk. So in the end, you just sort of saved all the way around and took out all the headaches with fuel. And certainly, as we know, the EPA continues to add more restrictions on things like fueling stations and tanks, and so there'll be more costs down the road too. So you're pushing those costs back to the private sector, and like you say, get us. It worked very well, and still works very well for the city.
Pleasure of the board concerning disposition of item R7. Mr. Baugh?
Well, to sum it up, decreased liability and exposure, increased efficiency and ability to, through opportunity to purchase. It makes total sense. I'm going to move approval.
Thank you.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item R7. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schaefer. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending the meeting. We are now adjourned.